live here very shortly for an episode of Deal Flow Live. All right, and now we are live on all platforms. Welcome everyone to Deal Flow Live. This is the show where we break down listings of businesses that are actively for sale online. We give our opinion on their value. We talk a little bit about what types of people might, be a good fit to acquire a business like this. We talk about whether or not we feel like they're a good deal. We talk about what kinds of considerations you should have when looking at buying a business like this. And all together, we just talk about making deals. And I am one of your hosts, Brody Vinson.
I'm your other host, Ryan Santo.
And today we are doing a deep dive on home services businesses, but specifically we're looking at HVAC businesses, HVAC or heating, ventilation, and air conditioning businesses, because these are the types of businesses that we're most heavily looking at right now for the private equity firm, for consulting that we're doing, and for a few other things. And we might talk a little bit about some of the reasons why in this episode, but we're going to dive into specifically some deals of HVAC companies that we think are attractive from the standpoint of acquiring and why, and also what kinds of things they might do to make themselves more attractive, for anyone to understand that might be trying to sell or grow a business like this. So the first one we're going to dive into today is one that Ryan found, and we might have looked at this one on the show previously. This one's actually been up on the market for a little while. The first thing I'm going to say about this one is to kind of shoot straight on like why I feel like it's been on the market for a while, because we've been following this one for probably a couple months now.
Yeah.
One thing that's very tough with HVAC businesses is it's tough to sell them for the highest possible price if all of the work that they do is new construction. The reason for this is mostly just because if anything changes in the market with new houses being built or anything like that, then that business is going to be shaken up a lot. It might have like a big fluctuation in the revenue and the profit because the new construction market changed. So it's kind of dependent on a different market versus companies that just do service alone, where they're just servicing homes all the time. Those businesses tend to get a little bit bigger valuations and sell for more money just because there's a little bit less, concern over if something changes in a different market over those businesses changing. So Ryan, I know you found this one. What was the thing that jumped out to you about this one most in particular?
Well, for me, I always like to check the EBITDA out, and it was $1 million EBITDA, so I was pretty happy with that. For me, I was interested in the new construction aspect because sometimes with new construction, you do get those service contracts being sold as well. But that wasn't specifically listed in the listing, and that gives me cause for concern. I mean, retrofitting is great, but I want to see some recurring revenue being built into the structure of these deals.
Yeah, I would agree with that a lot. That's another thing, aside from just like having regular service and that being the main focus of the company. The more that a business has recurring revenue, and this goes for any business outside of just HVAC businesses, but the more that any business has recurring, dependable, consistent revenue of some kind, where maybe people are on a subscription of some kind or some kind of monthly plan and they keep making purchases over and over again for some kind of reason that makes them kind of sticky to the business, those businesses sell for more money because there's just a higher dependability of those businesses continuing to make money after they get acquired. So with this one in particular, like Ryan said, there's not really anything telling us for sure that there is recurring revenue. That's probably one of the reasons we've seen it be on the market for a little while.
Sharing the screen?
I am not sharing the screen. I am sorry for anyone tuning in on LinkedIn or otherwise. Let me go ahead and share. Let's take a look at this one. So this one in particular, really great deal, I will say off the bat. It's a 1.8 cash flow asking for 5.5 million. So it's right at about like a 3x multiple, and anything above 1 million in cash flow, that's at a 3x multiple. That's actually a much better deal than you typically see. Typically, you would see that at more like a 4x multiple, maybe even a 5, depending on the business. So it's a really great deal. This could be a really great acquisition for someone that's just trying to run this business and grow this business. I will say, I wouldn't be as concerned about like fluctuations with new construction with this if you don't have some like very specific plan. I mostly go over that stuff because that's kind of how private equity looks at it. But for someone just looking to acquire a really good HVAC business and run it, this could be a really good one. What do you think, Ryan? What else did you see?
Well, I think something that's important to consider with this is that there needs to be some sort of plan for the aftermath of this. Like I said, the working with the builder to create service contracts that come along with the purchase of the home is very important, or something that's, an ideal relationship to have with a builder. But if you're buying this and you're just getting started, you're jumping into it, I think that it's good to kind of plan your out route essentially for how to not be so reliant on this. So I think it'd be kind of cool if we maybe took a little bit of time to talk about how we would transition ourselves to a more, I think, diverse workload of stuff. I know for me personally, I would start either developing a brand that is specifically targeted toward the domestic market, or if it was, Construction AC Incorporated, not going to get too many calls from homeowners, I would assume, but I would try to start getting that out to more homeowners and trying to find the people who may be working in this company already who would prefer to just do home stuff. Maybe they don't want to keep going on sites. Maybe they want a little bit less wear and tear. There's always people who want to mix up their workloads. So that'd be a great way for them to use other parts of their skill set. And I'd try to slowly trickle out my team that maybe wasn't getting as much time in the field and building up that other side of the business, maybe taking on fewer service contracts and working with specific builders that I had more relationships with rather than anyone.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And one thing I'll add to that is I think a huge opportunity for a company like this that has obviously they've got great relationships in new construction that are letting them this ability to do all of their business through new construction. One thing about new construction homes is that they are not already on a maintenance contract of some kind. Usually the best HVAC businesses that sell for the most money are ones that have a lot of recurring revenue, like we said, but usually that comes in the form of maintenance contracts where they're continuously servicing a home, maybe like once or twice a year, depending on the plan, and just making sure that the AC doesn't ever break and doesn't ever go out, because it's a lot more expensive if you do let the AC go out, and it could result in you not having any AC for a few days. One thing about new construction homes, though, is they aren't already on one of those plans. So there's an opportunity to get them on some kind of maintenance plan as soon as you service them for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would look to do with something like this is I would want to acquire it and then immediately bring on a service department of some kind. So I would want to bring on at least one technician that is focused purely on that service, and try to kind of tweak the way that we're doing this so that anytime we're doing some kind of install with new construction, we somehow also secure the continued maintenance for that. And then every job that we do for the next few years, we're starting to get more and more of those maintenance contracts, and every like little installation that we do in a new construction home, every little at bat that we have is another at bat to get a maintenance contract.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would start to just build like a small service department where they're servicing all of those ones. I would also put a contact list together of every home that we've serviced in the last 10 years or whatever kind of records they have. I would put together like a customer list and contact all of them with like a mailer or something, or an email blast or something like that, or some kind of contact, and basically introduce ourselves and let them know that we've started a service department and say, hey, we installed the AC in your home. We have a good understanding of how it works and how it needs to be serviced. Here's how our maintenance plans work. We would love to come by and, give you your first tune up for free or something like that. Some kind of offer to get them on, to like encourage getting on maintenance plans, and then just start to build out that service department more and more so that it relies less and less on that new construction. And then by the time that a couple of years have gone by and you've kind of started to maybe pay off some of the debt of this business or get a little bit free and clear of it, or just, get some of the returns for an investor if you got it with private capital. By that point, then you're starting to slowly have a little bit less dependence on that new construction, and everything that is in that service department starts to become recurring revenue. So you're just making like the business more and more of a percentage of recurring revenue over a few years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you spent a good few years focusing really hard on that and really working on it, all of a sudden that business becomes literally worth a lot more money.
And if you're, let me just say first, I think that's a pretty good game plan that is applicable and realistically could be done with a bit of time and effort on just a smaller scale too. So I think it's a replicable scaling plan that you have there. If you're fortunate enough to have the opportunity to have more capital on hand, or to have someone who is willing to help fund in a partnership of sorts or anyway, you could always go out and buy a much smaller service business that's doing almost exclusively residential, jump a couple steps ahead, and then just exclusively start doing that. Because like you said, you're hoping that these guys have records, but I think we can both say that if you built a house and installed the AC unit and it's been more than maybe 6 months, they've probably found someone who's starting to service their stuff, and getting them away from somebody who they've decided is going to be their person and they think is fine could be a very difficult task. You really need to jump on these as soon as they happen. You have a time limit, I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's going to depend on the geographic area. Here in Florida, that time window is shorter, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the place, like it could be that it's a couple of years before it needs to be serviced, or it could be very quickly if it's a really hot couple of years. But I think you're also right in the sense that a lot of these companies that have been around for a little while don't necessarily keep the best records of their customers, so they might not have a lot of a database to call on. So you can't really rely on that. But I do really like that idea. You could buy this along with one very small one and just start to really build out that service department and immediately make it worth a little bit more.
That sort of leapfrog approach is very appealing, I think, if you have the ability to expend the capital and energy to start merging two businesses together.
Yeah. And for something like this, one thing I will point out is it is a little bit outside of the SBA territory.
Mm.
So anything, that you're trying to, and hey, man, found Neolo, said, woohoo, hey, Brody. Great to have you on the live, man. Let us know if you have any questions as we're looking through some of this stuff too. One thing I'll say with this, though, back to the SBA route, if you were trying to acquire a business with SBA financing, or small business administration financing, it only goes up to $5 million. They'll only fund up to $5 million of a purchase. So with something like this, that's actually right outside of that zone, you might have to bring in some kind of like private investor or something like that. Maybe like someone in your network that is looking for some kind of like equity in a company like this to be able to get a deal done like this. So it's just a little bit different consideration. You would probably have to find someone like that, or just have deep pockets yourself. But if you're doing that anyway, then it might make a lot of sense to just let them know, hey, here's how I think we can make it worth a lot more money. And I'm going to go buy this one and then go buy another one and maybe already have one picked out, like another smaller one. And I think that could be a great plan. What else did you see about this one?
That was really kind of what stuck out to me. I mean, I liked how they structured it. It was short, sweet, to the point. They have a decent staff on there. It looks like they have a good mix.
Strong team, 19 employees.
Yeah, so there's probably at least a little bit of a sales team. They probably have a good diverse team, even though it's not specifically listed. And there's no real estate, which is always nice to avoid having to get involved in that. In the transaction, I tend to stay away from those, as you do as well at this point in time.
Yeah, it looks like they do have an office and it's leased.
Yeah, which is fine. That's exactly what you want to see. And also noticeably, this is something that we do harp on a bit, but we got to say is pretty important. The person selling is a broker, Patrick Lang. He is very well respected and very well known in the industry, not only as a business broker, but as a specialty HVAC broker. We always like to do our due diligence on the people that are selling and they're buying from, and his site and stuff is chock full of great stuff. So having done a bit more background on him, I would say he's somebody who you could reliably say knows what they're selling and is going to be a very knowledgeable person to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. This guy actually, will pull up his listing page. This is kind of a cool little insider tip that you can use to like get to know the brokers on some of these sites. This guy in particular, I've actually talked to, and he sells nothing but HVAC and related businesses, which is really cool. He's literally got all of these businesses listed for sale, which is just crazy.
And I think it's understated that somebody in the industry of business brokerage is specializing business brokers. It's more of a shotgun approach, because realistically, you get the numbers, you get the idea, you put it on, you try to find somebody who's looking for it. Somebody who's niched down so much as he has, and he's a service-based business guy. I mean, based on his career. So like he knows what he's doing, and you're going to get good information. He's only going to be representing businesses that he feels are worth it.
It's true. Yeah. And he's got at least a few dozen here listed all at one time, which is cool. And you can even see like what businesses he's sold. He's sold multiple as well that he has listed on there.
This site.
So very cool. Just a little insider tip there.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to this one, I think in general, we've covered this one pretty extensively. Let's look at another one.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know what's jumping out at you based on this list, Ryan.
I think we should go a little bit further down. There's one that I saw there. There's a lot of franchises popping up now. I've noticed that a bit more on the listing sites.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. There's that Winter Garden one that says 175,000.
Where is it?
Scroll down a bit more, I think.
Look at something a little bit smaller.
Yeah, there it is.
Here we go.
That's interesting, because you normally look at those numbers and you say, how would somebody sell for 175 when they're bringing home, that's 131, I believe?
131,000.
Yeah, those numbers seem a little bit weird, right?
Yes and no. I think they're realistic. For one like this, it's only got 2 employees. So this is a job. This is a job that someone would have to take over. Whenever there's not much of a team running it, I think that, in my mind, that reduces the price that you can charge for your business, because whoever does buy it is either going to have to pay someone to run it, which can be very expensive to pay a CEO. Depending on the business, you might be talking about, anywhere from like 60 grand to like upwards of a couple $100,000, depending on the size of the business. So
it does state in here that he does work in the business and do some stuff, but where he's saving a ton of money is he's subcontracting out. Can you expand a little bit on that, about the subcontracting aspect of this business and how it relates to it?
Yeah, that's something that's that I've seen a few times in HVAC. Is sometimes like when someone's been running a business for a while, which it sounds like this person has. It's been around for 22 years, it says, and they cite the reason for selling as wanting to retire. So sometimes when someone's been doing that for a long time, you see that they've like started subcontracting a lot of the work because they just don't necessarily want to do it as much on their own anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they've gotten tired. Maybe they just don't feel like they have to, and they can make a decent income. But basically what happens is they have a book of business and customers that they serve regularly. They also have a brand name and maybe an online presence too that attracts customers. But instead of servicing that work directly, they go find other technicians that they know in their network that they know can do good work, and they'll just pay them to go do the jobs. So you see this a good bit. For me, that's not necessarily a bad business to buy, but I'd rather buy one with employees that are servicing it. All that being said, though, if you're a pretty established operation, buying something like this could be a really good tuck in to an existing operation where they've got a good book of business and customers, and you're just folding it into what you're already doing.
Unless you're looking for a job or an HVAC technician looking to jumpstart your career, this is a tuck-in option, maybe for someone who is buying a large construction exclusive company that wants to get into the domestic market.
That's a good point.
We have a question here off of YouTube, actually. Ayub Ali, I hope I'm saying your name right.
Shout out Ayub. I know Ayub.
He said, great live so far, Brody. Actually had a question regarding competition and partners. I have a technical app founder I am in contact with. I offered to buy and he declined, but I was able to convince him to allow me to partner with him up to 49% equity based off revenue milestones. Wow, that's impressive. What is
That's
the
especially impressive because Ayub is under 20 years old. So props to you, Ayub. That's really
yeah,
good
great,
stuff.
great job. You must have a lot of knowledge that you brought to the table. You got to have a quite a good set of skills for somebody to offer almost half to you for equity based revenue.
Let me
Went to
take
the
a look at this
question.
question. So he said, I have a technical app founder I am in contact with. I offered to buy. So it sounds like you offered to buy his business. He declined, but you were able to convince him to allow you to partner with him up to 49% equity. I assume that means based off of you helping him achieve revenue
Yeah.
milestones.
I would help him market and sell the app. It's already doing $1,400 revenue MRR. Is it worth it to partner or should work with another technical founder? Well, I think it's a matter of a perspective here. If you believe in the app and you believe that you can achieve the milestones based on the app and the combination of his abilities and your skills, combined with if you believe you guys can actually work together.
Yeah, my biggest question is there any potential downside in here? It sounds like you don't even have to buy into the company at all,
Yeah, I
right?
mean,
And you can basically earn in up to 49% equity. It sounds like maybe you might have to run some ads for him to be able to get this really growing and going. So is the offer that you would be chipping in on the cost of ads and the cost of marketing in order to do this? Let
yeah,
us know some more details on that if you can.
yeah, I think where I'm kind of wondering where he's at is if it's a money thing, if you're thinking $1,400 and you're wondering if it's worth your time for the 1,400, well, at that point you got to say, what are you making now doing other stuff versus the time value commitment of doing this for a cut of that revenue and what you think you can scale it to. I mean, if you've just got the extra time and you just want to do it, why not? But if you can make $5,000 doing something with the time and effort you're doing this, then it doesn't really seem like much of an effort. So I think it all depends on what you have going on.
We have a little update. He said I would have to do a trial period of about 30 days and I would just have to prove that I could improve traffic. I see absolutely zero downside in you doing this. The downside is if I do a great job, he could just use all the marketing ideas and do it himself. So if you're going to get into this, I would, if it's a 30-day trial period, worst case scenario, you do some work for him and he does take the idea and you wasted some time. Don't spend too much money on it then, and don't spend too much time, but just see what you can get done in 30 days and just be very smart about the way you write up your contract with them, I would say, and write up the contract so that before you do any work with this guy, it's very clearly stated that you own the intellectual property of the ideas that you bring and that he doesn't have to use them, but that if he does decide to use them, then you are entitled to whatever you agree to in that agreement, is what I would say. We actually have another question as well from Found Niolo on Instagram. He said, definitely glad to be here. Love BizQuest. We agree. BizQuest it's a great site to look on if you're looking for acquisitions. He said, so would it make sense to acquire the HVAC business that had 2 employees in the business just to take the customer base? So what I would say is if you are not already running an HVAC business, absolutely not.
Mm-mm.
I think you would be really struggling to service everyone and figure out what you're doing. If you are already running an HVAC business, maybe larger than this, maybe even like comparable to the size of this, that's trying to grow, that's where it would make a lot of sense to acquire a customer base like this and try to bolt it on. That being said, you would still want to keep those 2 employees on to continue doing what they're doing. But I don't think it would be the end of the world if they didn't want to stay on either. I think the big thing would just be making sure that you do anything that you can do to retain those customers. Where it really would make sense is if there happens to be like a high level of customers that are maintenance agreements of some kind where they're being serviced on a regular basis here. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I would say this is something where you would need to, if you want to jump in, I guess, to acquire the customer base and you're just looking for a list, you don't got a company to back it up, you're going to be out of luck. If you want to jump in and learn the business, you could do that. You would have to talk with the owner about how involved he is and probably end up paying him to stay on more to help you learn the ropes if you don't already know it. I would say if you're jumping into the pool, you would want to go for something that maybe has a couple more people, has an owner who's willing to stay on for a fee, and definitely eat that bottom line a bit to pay the other people to help you get running smoothly and understanding what you're doing to then in the future be able to profit and grow it. So that's a good business for existing or somebody who is in the industry, or you go buy your first ones a little bigger. You eat your profits a little bit to keep yourself knowledgeable, and then you come back and grab this one because this one's been around for a while, and I think a lot of people have the same intention. You're buying a list and maybe a couple people, but it's subcontract work. So if you had the people to support it, not a big deal.
I agree.
Also, Ayub is back.
Yep. So I like this question a lot, Ayub. He's asking, what is the mindset in business when it comes to dealing with more established competitors, but not really top dogs yet?
That's a good one.
Competitors in general, just because he feels like sometimes he struggles with having like a market scarcity mentality. Here's what I would honestly do. Unless the market really is like insanely niche, most markets have, especially competitive ones, have plenty of market share to go around. Whenever a market is especially competitive, I think it's competitive for a reason. It's competitive because there's something here, right? So I always just think of it as an opportunity to just get in and be better than the competitors, right? If there's market share going around, all you have to do is get in and figure out, especially when they're more established, be the David to their Goliath. Like come in and just figure out what kinds of efficiencies and innovations they can't take advantage of because they're already so established and doing things the way that they're doing them. Come in and exploit those. Do what they can't do. Do the types of things that, like the high level of service or the things that they can't do. And if you can find opportunities like that, that's where I think it gets really interesting. But when I look at a competitive market, we're looking at HVAC today. HVAC is a very competitive market, but it's very competitive because there's a lot of demand in it, and there's plenty of demand to go around.
I have a couple thoughts on this. So I think I just want to go back to the other question. Like Brody said, you lock in that contract very clearly, but also make sure you have a metric that you want to hit, the bare minimum metric. Because number one, like he said, do not go over that metric. Maybe pass it by like 1 or 2, but do not die on that hill by tripling it if you can. You want to have a metric that he thinks is impressive and you want to hit it. Boom, done. Secondly, if you're good at what you do and you really do believe in yourself, it doesn't matter if he tries to take your ideas. He'll never be you. He can never replicate you. So even if he tries to take it and run, he's never going to be as good as you are. He will more than likely get frustrated and be unable to replicate your results because you are that good. I don't know, but I'm saying like that's the mentality you have to have is nobody can replicate what you bring to the table. And that's kind of how, if you look at Brody, that's really how he's come to most anything he's done, is that he may not know the people he's working with yet, but he's the best. And he knows if they didn't want him in there, he's going to outperform him, 10 ways to Sunday. Secondly, when it comes to the competition aspect, scrap it out, man. I mean, I love to talk to interesting and successful people and people who are way smarter than me. And you would not believe how many failed ventures or how many weird kind of dead end places people went and made successful that just couldn't get to the next level because the person at the forefront couldn't get it there. So I would say this is just another way for you to find out new tactics. And if it's a smaller industry, start learning from all your competitors, pull their stuff, take what you can, apply that to something else in the future. I mean, this guy could give you a really good opportunity to find something that you're really niching into. And on your future ventures, all these lessons are going to compact. So I think the trial metric, yes, definitely want to have a trial metric, but I think you got the right. I'd jump in, kill it, not enough where he thinks it's already done, but just enough where he sees the value. And if he doesn't, well, then I don't know, go to a competitor even. You're
And
not exclusive.
as far as like thinking about the trial metric, I would ask him what he thinks is fair. Like clearly this guy, like he wants something from you. That's why he's considering, bringing you on to be like a co-founder with him and have some equity. I would ask him what he thinks is like a fair amount to justify what your ask is, and just back it up from there. Question-based selling. Look up question-based selling and kind of like learn that process. For me, that's how I really like to sell. But I would look up I would like ask him like, what does he think is like a amount of traffic that would justify you getting that equity and doing that? And then ask yourself honestly, is that something you can pull off? If it's not, don't do the deal because you'll waste time. If you think it's something you can pull off, go for it and make it happen. And then you'll have a very clear understanding and you'll have not played the guessing game of whether you're earning your place there or not. We do have another question too. And this is a question that we love to talk about and that we have covered a couple different times, but always love to cover again. Someone at Official Offer Biz asked, how are you all sourcing deals? There's a few different ways we're sourcing deals. So I just covered this in a YouTube video I put out actually, but I like to go back to Alex Hormozi's Core 4 framework. So he has this Core 4 framework of like generating opportunities for business. And it basically says that there's 4 core ways that you can generate leads for business. And I think of these as leads. When we're talking about sourcing deals, by the way, for anyone tuning in, sourcing a deal means like if you're trying to acquire a business, you have to like find it from somewhere. You have to find that opportunity. So one way to source deals is what we're looking at right now, which is just looking on like these listing sites like Biz Buy Sell. There's plenty of them just listed there, but anyone can go on and see those. What you probably really want to know about is how to source off-market deals. So with Alex Hormozi's Core 4 framework, there's warm outreach, cold outreach, ads, and content. I personally right now use 3 of those 4 mostly. I don't really run ads for acquisitions. It's not something I'm closed off to. It's probably something we'll do in the future, more so. What I do though is content, warm outreach, and cold outreach. So I'll kind of go through each of those. And Ryan, why don't you start us off with cold outreach a little bit?
I mean, cold outreach is you're dialing for dollars. You're emailing for anything that you can get. I mean, it's no different than going on these sites and filling out the form. You're hitting up a website, you're aggregating a bunch of businesses information through LinkedIn or any of the mutual sites. I mean, we have some buddies over at a site that does that really well. What's it called? So
we use something called Resquared. It's basically like a data aggregation website. So you go on it. It's a paid service. So
but one of the best in the game.
It's fantastic. So, and this is not necessarily an option for everyone. If you don't have a budget, this might not be an option for you. If you've got a little bit of a monthly budget to source deals with, we like Resquared because you compile a list of businesses in your area on, in a particular industry. You put it together and then it lets you email 50, 75, up to 100 of them a day with a particular piece of messaging where you're just reaching out and starting a conversation.
The AI bot they have there is very good. The emails are they scrape through the company's site and they create these personalized emails that are not only grammatically correct, but also like mention specific things. So it gets a lot more traction than I think the average cold email does. But of course, cold email only goes so far. And, I always prefer warm and building those connections in person. And I think that's definitely something that you've had a lot of experience in, Brody, actually firsthand.
Yeah. So warm outreach, I always say, also, by the way, I don't know what skip tracing is. I would love if you could
take care, Ayub. Thanks for coming on. Pleasure having you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ayub. And Official Offer Biz, I would love if you could explain to us what skip tracing is. I'm definitely curious to hear about that. Talking about warm outreach, though, for that, I would say, people in your network that might know owners of the types of businesses that you could acquire. If you're trying to source deals in HVAC, for example, like we are, it's just becoming kind of a walking billboard of what you're trying to do. So starting to talk about it when you're having conversations with people, just on a day-to-day basis, letting them know what you're up to. Maybe even just reaching out to people in your network proactively, like sending them a text or giving them a call, people that might know of these types of businesses. And, a really good general source of these types of people are lawyers, accountants, financial advisors. They might have these types of people as clients already. So reach out to these people that are already in your network that you know and ask them if they know of any of these types of businesses that are looking to sell or that have started to consider selling, because the referral that you get will go a much longer way than a cold outreach. If someone's accountant reaches out to them and they had already told the accountant that they were thinking about selling their business, and their accountant reaches out and said, I really think you should talk to this guy, Ryan, about selling your business, then there's going to be a lot of goodwill built into that introduction already. And they're going to hear out what you have to say a little bit more based on my experience.
Something else I think is important to say is that you need to find some way to connect with those people, the lawyers, the accountants, and the people within the industry in a way that's sincere and, I guess, organic would be the word. Because then you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll just cold outreach to these people and maybe they'll, hey, here's my stuff, I'm doing this, recommend me somebody.
I'm thinking people that are kind of already warm contacts, like people that you already know.
Yeah. I'm not, I only know 2 lawyers. I'm hoping to know 3 at some point on not like that, but like, never mind. Yeah. So I would just say that one of the ways that you can actually find more new contacts, in the warm lead sector and become, you are actually a point, like a lightning bolt actually for warm connections at this place that you're at right now. And it's only getting stronger. And that is because of this personal brand and the social media aspect that you have developed.
So that brings us into the third one that I do, which is content. So we talked about doing cold outreach to find deals and source deals. We talked about warm outreach. The third of the 4 that I mentioned that I do regularly is, and if you're tuning in from Instagram, you know this, but I post every single day about what I'm doing. And I'm documenting the journey. And it's really important that I'm like doing it this way. And I want to take a second to point that out. I'm documenting the journey because it allows people to kind of like peel back the curtain and feel like they understand what's going on and how it might be able to relate to them. So what happens when you do something like that is, and what you don't see on the back end is, as I'm creating content like this, or like Ryan and I are doing right now, doing this live show, and recording it, we're creating content that people might see and it might be relevant to them. So if you're trying to source deals for HVAC, again, for example, someone might see this live show, or someone might see one of my Instagram posts or TikTok posts. They might reach out to me and say, hey, my brother's trying to sell his HVAC company, or hey, I work with a few HVAC companies. In fact, I'm meeting with someone, it's a Friday. I'm meeting with someone on Friday that saw my content, happens to live here in town, and does marketing for a bunch of home services companies and wants to talk to me about it. And I had someone else reach out to me that's in that same position recently too. And those types of opportunities come from just putting yourself out there and talking about what you're doing.
Actually, we have a question coming in from YouTube again, from found_Neolo. That makes a lot of sense. When it comes to your building a team, how did you 2 go about it? And I think she's kind of or whoever they are, is asking more about how did you and I kind of find these people, or how did we diversify? I think you have definitely a lot of people in your circles that you've found through all this other stuff. So I think this is a really good question for you.
When it comes to building a team, I personally like to do it really organically. The example I'll use is actually from like the first big business that I had. So I got my start in staffing actually. And the way that we built, the guy that ended up actually kind of running our company, was he was just working on one of our first contracts. We contracted this guy out expecting, hey, he'll work one job and hopefully do a good job. And he was working with a bunch of other people, and he just very quickly showed leadership, like a lot of leadership. And so we like leaned into that, and we offered him, a little bit higher up position, and kind of did that. And that just happened very organically because he started to like show that potential. But I think you just have to be in something like this, to do something like buying businesses or doing private equity deals of some kind. You have to become like a serial networker. You have to always be networking and always thinking about making new connections, because I might get connected with like 100 people and one of them have any relevance to what we're doing right now. And that's okay. And you've got to be willing to have a lot of conversations that don't go anywhere, just for the sake of creating a network and having those connections that could go somewhere one day, maybe. And I just make a habit out of that, doing that all the time. And sometimes, someone that could be on your team will come up just through that organically.
Brody's catchphrase is always take the meeting. And much to the chagrin of people around him who work with him, sometimes he takes those meetings at times where you're like, we had something. It's like, no, but I got a meeting.
I'm trying to be better about it.
You've gotten really much better about it. But honestly, you probably wouldn't have half the network that you have and all the success that you've had if you hadn't just taken every single meeting. And quite honestly, the quality of the meetings that you're getting now as a result are much higher. You're getting people who are in various larger places coming and wanting those meetings with you. I think that the one thing that you do incredibly well is that when you approach somebody at a networking event or you see people, your first thing is to talk to them, and you're always a providing value type of guy. Like, you're trying to help somebody get put onto something as soon as possible. So you're always like, what do you do? You're so interested in them that you've never had to actually tell somebody what you do, because they've always asked you first. And I think that's a very important thing to point out, is that Brody comes at somebody with the I'm going to help you mentality. And it's so infectious, and that reciprocation law kind of kicks in and people are like, oh, well, what do you do? And then 9 times out of 10, it's always like, if they can't help you, they want your contact because they want to talk to somebody else and maybe mention you at some point. Who knows?
I've always tried to lead with that, because it's how I like to meet people. When I meet people and they're like actively like helping me with something or seeing how they can help, it's just like, it's a pleasant interaction. And I was just talking to someone about this earlier today. Shout out Jack, about like how he was talking to me about how he's considering like trying to get into private equity, and he's like looking at the different routes of it. I was telling him, I think so many people try to get into it, like whether it's private equity or some other thing, they try to get into some new opportunity by like just going and like looking for these opportunities and just trying to like nail the pitch. And it's honestly like, it's a ruthless world in the sense that it's like, it's business at its most extreme. And this is just kind of like a microcosm of any kind of business, but private equity especially, you really only get in based on your ability to provide value and bring deals to the table. So I was telling this guy, like, an example of how you could provide value is, rather than just going and applying for jobs and like trying to get accepted for a job based on like your track record and your merit, bring something to the table, bring like a real opportunity to the table. And you can kind of like not name your terms, but you can dictate a lot better terms than you would be able to otherwise for whatever you're trying to do. And I always try to lead with that, because it just opens opportunities when you're leading with value and actually helping with someone with something. I've always just found that people tend to be more receptive to whatever it is you're doing. And like Ryan mentioned there's that law of reciprocity, where if you help someone with something, they tend to maybe want to help you with something. And if you don't even ask, they might just be like, geez, like, what can I help this guy with? I'm uncomfortable at this point. He helped me so much. Like, what do I do for him? And I don't want to make people uncomfortable. That's not my point. I want to like provide so much value when I'm dealing with someone that they're like, I feel like I got to give back.
I think it's more of I mean, if we did like a meet and greet, or like we had an event and people who watch the show could come and like meet us and meet some of the other people that we've had on the show, I feel like you spend 10 minutes with you and you just get it. You're like, now this guy hear from me, and I'm really not used to that being somebody's natural default. Like that, it's not an uncomfortableness. It's just there's a mentality that I think is not really seen as much, especially like you said in the space where it's like, how can I get that extra $2 from this person? I guess I'll just cut their throat and leave them on the floor. Like you always say, it's the company you're building is a private equity, but with a very democratic. It's private equity for all, essentially, I think is one of your phrases, and I think that really resonates with how you speak and approach people. So
I appreciate that. Grant, thank you for tuning in. He said, he quoted someone. He said, "Be so nice they're uncomfortable. B Pain."
I think that's you.
I'm B Pain.
I think you might be B Pain. Yeah.
We also have a question. Simmons.Bryce asked, with that in mind, how did you get involved in the space? So I told this story actually earlier today to someone that I met. Ryan and I both got, yeah, he said B Pain is you.
How did you forget that you said, you say something and forget it? Grant always has to remind you.
Ryan was joking before the show. I'm like an Alzheimer's patient. Like I just forget things I've said all the time.
Apologies to anyone with a relative that has it.
Yeah, sorry for the insensitivity there.
Brody's in 7 deals all the time in his head, so like sometimes he'll just repeat something, and I just have to laugh. But it means he actually has work to do, which is something that I'm really, really happy to be dealing with somebody who does real actual work.
But we do have a question from Simmons.Bryce. So he said, how did you get involved in the space? And Ryan and I got involved in different ways, both. So I'll let him give his side of the story as well. Myself personally, I got involved in a little bit of a unique way in the sense that I didn't really go like work at a private equity company or work in investment banking or anything like that, like a lot of people do when they start out. I actually went and I became an entrepreneur first. So I was one of the founders of a business that was a staffing business, and we grew that up over a couple of years, ended up selling that business last year. And so I started to learn about mergers and acquisitions when this bigger staffing company bought our company. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's interesting to think about like the motivation they have behind buying it. Why would they pay money for something like this? Like just thinking through that and kind of learning about it, and also learning all the different things that we could have done differently to like increase the value of our sale or do better, or like, kind of grow through acquisitions if we were running the company again. So I got into consulting after that. I kind of started my own consulting company and started helping small business owners work towards their exits and maximize their exits. And it's been really, really fun and fulfilling work. And that led me to also doing business brokering. So I'm actually helping people sell their businesses now. And through doing all of that, I just started seeing that a lot like private equity companies were some of the biggest players in this field, and they were buying a lot of companies. And I also got to know the business model itself, like got to know what private equity is. And as I got to know it, I thought, wow, like I'm kind of doing the same types of things with these businesses through my consulting that I would be doing if I just owned a bunch of them and was trying to grow and sell them. So why not just make it official, put a ring on it, and just start acquiring some of these businesses? So I just got obsessive about the space and started, deep diving on YouTube, talking to people in the space, meeting people in the space, and like reaching out and networking like we've been talking about. And that got to teach me a little bit more about it. And that's what brought us here.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Ryan? What got you like interested in the space initially?
Oh, well, I mean, you hit me with your car at a crosswalk, and I said, if you don't let me join your business, I'm going to sue you. And that's kind of how we started working together. But I grew up in a family with small. That's a joke, by the way. That is a joke.
It's not a joke.
We're
still in legal
Grant,
proceedings.
So I grew up in a small business family. My parents both grew their businesses, and my mom, especially in the dog training and daycare space. Neither of them had ever had any business knowledge, and kind of watching these businesses grow and develop without any of the business acumen, essentially, and trying to run it all based on just like, I think we should do this, and maybe this is how we do that, was really fun, and also at the same time really sad at times when things would happen. And I watched my mom have a lot of people come in as goodwill investors or people who wanted to help and then try, to do shady things on the side. And eventually somebody came in through an SBA program that helped her completely make her business much more profitable and much more efficient while keeping the integrity and the spirit of the business alive. And from there, I decided that I wanted to commit myself to helping people who, like my mom, really thought, I'm going to die in this business. There's no hope, to turning it around to something where they enjoy it and also can see that they could possibly sell it at the end. Joined the MBA program, met Brody, and I just thought that it was the coolest thing what he was doing. And when he started Scale for Sale, I was like, look, I want to work with you. So whatever I can do, I want to be a part of that. And then just kind of we really resonated on a lot of stuff. First day we took a personality test, and me and Brody's dots were about 2 centimeters away from each other, which either was going to be enemies or friends, and thankfully it was the latter of the two. But it's been a lot of fun meeting small business owners and kind of seeing that there's a lot of people who are in the situation that I grew up in, but we can take what they have and in a very, like Brody calls it, ethical and kind way, purchase it and transform it into a place where their people want to stay, want to work, want to grow, but we can also build something that maybe they just don't have the time or effort to do because they've made it this far. They just want to be done. And I love that we find a lot of people we can help actually just be done. And a lot of times we help them be done with a little extra cash because we keep them on for equity and they keep making money. I mean, it's the most ethical way, I think, of doing this in an industry that gets a lot of bad flack.
And I was just going to say something around that as well, because like private equity companies often do get a lot of flack because there are a lot of them out there doing it kind of in a shadier or less ethical way. So we just saw a real opportunity in the space to come in with our entrepreneur knowledge and, business acumen and actually be able to like work on growing these businesses versus just like looking for whatever kind of money arbitrage was out there. Of course, there's money arbitrage in it. Like you can't really make this business model work without looking for some of that, but you can look for those money arbitrage opportunities while also growing the business. And I think it's a much more like good, solid way for the business to operate than just looking for how can I come in here, slash costs and just completely optimize the heck out of it at the expense of anyone involved in it. There's some private equity companies that have gotten really bad raps over the years because there's literally ones that were in like the 70s or 80s that would go and like buy a company that they saw had assets in it that were worth more than what they were asking to sell the business for. Then they would sell all the assets and forget about the business. And I think that's just the most messed up thing ever.
Yeah, that's actually how the industry started. I was listening to a podcast about it because what else does a loser like me listen to? But business podcasts. But yeah, that's actually the start of the movie Pretty Woman. That's like the main plot line in that movie is that
really?
He's like, yeah, he's buying a junkyard or something, and he's like, oh man, they undervalued all the assets. I'll just hit it, gut it, and sell it off. And like it's kind of like he has a come to Jesus moment at the end where he goes, no, we're not going to do this anymore. And then that was like the second stage of private equity where it was like, okay, we're going to keep the business and kind of do it. And I think you can actually track private equity kind of like you can track coffee. Like this is third or fourth wave private equity where we see like people taking that much more gentle approach of like the gut it and sell it is no longer a fast turnaround thing. That's no longer what people want. They want sustainable, recurring, and easy to manage businesses because at the end of the day, you got companies who are literally, as you've told me, and as the New York Times actually did an article about this, or was it the Wall Street Journal? I forget. The private equity sector where private equity companies are paying other smaller private equity companies to go and do private equity work for them is now a well-known and documented thing because
Grant, yes, if you're listening, Pretty Woman is a movie about private equity.
Yes, it is actually a movie about private equity. But that it's gotten to the point where I think some of these older established ones are just so tired of that model, but the people who are in our shoes are developing these sustainable and recurring models where you're not burning out your people on both ends to make a company work. You're like, oh wait, I can make this work long term and I don't have to be sleeping 2 hours a night and going crazy trying to make this thing a profitable turn.
Exactly. We have a couple other questions, by the way. So one question is from Himenelik. why HVAC and plumbing companies, what metrics and factors do you use to determine to buy or invest in them? Like what would attract you to something like this? So HVAC and plumbing, there's a few reasons we like them. I'll start with HVAC, and the plumbing is kind of like a subsector of focus for us, but HVAC is the number one. The reason we like both of them is that a lot of times the people that are working in these businesses, the employees that are in them, which is a very important aspect of buying it. Like if you're buying it, part of what you're buying it for is like the people that work in it. A lot of the employees that tend to work in these businesses are careerists. They think of this as a career, and it is their career because it's a specialized trade often that they went to school for and studied really hard for and like really built a lot of experience in. So when you look at buying a business, it's really important that the employees are going to continue to work in it and thrive in it if that's your strategy, which for us it is. So if the employees see it as like a career, a long-term career, that's a really great thing because there's a higher likelihood that they'll continue to stay on after you acquire it. That's why we like HVAC in particular, amongst home services. But why home services in particular, things like HVAC, or any other kind of like residential service that happens in the home. The reason we like those is because they are capturing demand versus creating demand. So what I mean by that is like, if you're talking about consulting companies, you have to go out and create demand. You have to go out and like help people realize that they have a specific problem before they even want to go about trying to solve it. With something like an HVAC company, your AC goes out and you're like, man, I need to solve this problem immediately. Who can do this for me around? You're going and contacting the company to help you, not the other way around. And so it's a lot easier way to do it.
It's also a job that is not going to get. I don't think we'll be alive if they manage to make AI able to fix an HC unit. So it is just technology can advance all it likes. AI is not doing this, at least in our lifetime. There's always going to need to be a human going out to a place to fix an AC unit.
Exactly. And on that note, like anything that, like, if you're looking at a business to buy, it doesn't have to be HVAC. Obviously, there's plenty of opportunities out there. But to Ryan's point, it's a good, stable type of business that is not going to have like a lot of fluctuations if the market goes down. And whenever you're thinking about an investment opportunity, you don't want to be investing in like the latest like crypto AI tool, right? Because
Supermicro.
Because someone's going to come tomorrow and probably disrupt that. And that's not to say you should never build something like that if you understand the space. And if you really do understand a space intimately, like, I'm not going to say you should never invest in something like that. But for me, I want to look at companies that are good, stable, solid businesses that just run well and grow a little bit year over year as long as they're run properly. And so that's what attracts us to HVAC. I would say things like accounting are really good businesses for that as well. The types of things that are just going to continue to be needed.
We have a question actually back from Niolo again on YouTube. I'm happy you brought that up. PE has a pretty bad rep when it comes to work culture. How do you maintain a positive business culture and human capital in the business you buy? Well, one of the rules that we have that the very, very, very smart Mr. Grant Barnes has coined as the term schmuck insurance. If you're selling us your business, you got to be on the hook for a little bit. You're going to keep a small fraction of that too, because we don't want you ditching us and throwing us basically a lemon car, as that analogy works. So we have the owners stay in to a certain degree because they're all in on the transaction. They're happy with the transaction. We have the owner really be a facilitator of that transition and be that kind of bridge that helps us not only for customers, but like you're saying, the human capital, the people who work in the business. We want them to understand that we have the same intent as the owner, and we have the same goals to make more money for us in the business and also to make them more money. And having somebody who they trust and respect be that facilitator and assure them that this is not just a, hey, I'm paid, I'm gone, have a nice day, guys. Sorry this happened, is important to us. I mean, we want these businesses to be more successful. We want everybody to be rich. So if the person who's getting paid to basically become our new consultant, the owner, is going to convey our positive intentions and our ideas to the people, we're likely to have a really easy transition, and a lot of people who are interested in growing with us and have that same mindset. So that's how we really kind of smooth that over and make the transition as easy as possible.
I'll chip in here too. Back to my days running the staffing company that I really like came up in, I developed like what I call the 3 C's for like just creating a good culture. The 3 C's of culture. It's really easy to remember. It's caring, cultivating, and consistency. So number one, you've got to actually care about the people. You can't just run a business and not care about the people in it, because you're not going to get anywhere. So you have to genuinely care about the people in it and show them that you care. And you show them that you care by asking about what they need. You develop a relationship. You actually treat them like a human being, because they are, and get to know them and like what kinds of desires they have, where do they want to go in their career, what do they want to do, what do they want to achieve, what is this for them, like what is it, what kind of like opportunity do they see this as. Next thing is cultivating. You can't just care but not do anything about it. So you have to hear what they care about, and then it's your job as a leader to take those things that they care about and see what you can do about them to actually bring those things to fruition or help them achieve those. And if those things aren't realistic, or if they're like out of line with what is possible, then it's your job to have the hard conversations and help them like develop a more realistic plan. So sometimes you have to have those hard conversations, but it is your job to cultivate. And the 3rd C is consistency. You can't just do those things. You can't care every few weeks and cultivate every few weeks. You've got to consistently do these things. And I think the more you can instill that in the culture of any business, the better it runs. And when our business was running at its peak is when I feel like those things were really happening most consistently from the leadership. We also have a couple more questions here. First, I'll say, Grant said, simply put, more millennials buying homes. Millennials don't know how to fix anything. Home services companies are going to grow as that population enters the home buying market. That is a fantastic point. There's something really interesting.
Can you pin his comment below that though, real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that one's people follow great leaders. Yeah.
Grant, and then he also said, people follow great leaders, lead from the front, and you'll never lose good people. Be the light in the dark room, and everyone will start walking in that direction. That is awesome stuff. And Grant, actually, if you know Grant personally, he exemplifies that really well. Mm-hmm. Back to his comment, though. Yeah, he's totally right. I'm a millennial myself. I am terrible with this stuff. I am so lost when it comes to like fixing things in the home. I'm on the business side of anything that's going on here. So I am by no means an expert with that type of stuff. And there's a lot of people that are entering the home buying market that are millennials and need help with servicing their AC systems, or they need landscaping, they need their grass or trees cut, they need plumbing done, and they just don't know how to fix it themselves. And so that market is going to continue to grow. And there, with that comes a lot of people that are aging out of these businesses. Someone on Instagram mentioned boomer businesses are where it's at. Completely agree. We love to see a business that is like where the owner is retiring. That's always a really good opportunity to transfer that ownership. So I would look for that. We have another question as well. Julius the Third, shout out Julius. He says AI agents would be tremendously helpful, would help tremendously with the back end operations of an HVAC company in efficiency and client experience. What's your thoughts on AI use in HVAC businesses as a value add? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. The only thing I'll say is I wouldn't try to take too much of the personalization out of running it. I would focus more on automation, and we focus more on automation than AI, meaning like workflows, meaning like automated workflows in the CRM, so that customers are getting messages and emails and texts to let them know like what's going on and kind of like help streamline the experience. But I wouldn't necessarily try to like take too much of the personalization out of it. But where I think AI is really interesting is like helping aggregate and read data that you're getting within an organization. What do you think, Ryan?
You took the words right out of my mouth. When I'm pissed off because my AC unit's busted and I've had to go through an AI tree of 4 or 5 different menus, that poor person who does answer when I finally overridden it and said, give me a person, they're going to get a whole lot of emotions from something they don't deserve. Whereas, as Brody said, AI is a complementary tool and not necessarily a replacement tool. So you can have a basic 2-term tree of press 1 for sales, press 2 for service update. But you're going to want, when it hits the fan or when somebody really needs something, you're going to want somebody who picks up the phone and talks to them, because a human-to-human connection is going to override anything that you can get. I mean, I think a great example of this is that I'll use this one is when I have seen these vending machines pop up that sell like pizza and like cake. I don't know if you've seen these before. They're crazy. They're huge in Vegas.
I saw the cake ones in the airport when I was just on my trip last week. I could not believe it. I maybe I'm missing something here, but I cannot imagine ordering a slice of cake out of a vending machine.
I wouldn't. And then if you said
the craziest thing is there were people in line for them.
Well, it's an airport. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
I won't go on my airport rant. But if you have that, and then you have 2 doors down, you have a bakery, you're going to go to the bakery every time. Even though if they're selling the same product, they put the bakery's cake in the vending machine, probably going to go to the bakery because I trust the bakery because it's a real person. And I don't, naturally, we're going to be less averse to that. Mentally, I think if you gave a person the same piece of cake, the cake from the bakery will always be rated as the better cake, even though it was the exact same piece baked at the exact same time, because of the interaction. So that's why you do need that human part. But like you said, married with the AI to eliminate the redundancies that they would face during their day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you got to be careful about over AIing things. AI, in my opinion, I think of it as a tool to help with things that people are already doing or to save people time, but not as a replacement for people. I think a huge opportunity in HVAC and other like home services and just service companies in general is, if you were to, in Florida where we're at in Orlando, if you were to pull up a list of like the top 10, 20 HVAC companies in your area and you had something that you needed to fix and you tried to call all of them, a lot of them are not going to answer the phone, believe it or not. Like maybe people can believe that. A lot of them are just not going to pick up the phone. And that means there's a huge opportunity to be the 1 or 2 or 3 out of 20 that does pick up the damn phone. Because as soon as you do pick it up, they're going to feel that personal connection and they're going to make their purchasing decision with you. And a lot of people want to try to automate that out or like use AI to like just capture that. And I just don't think that's going to work very well.
They have pizza. Like the pizza vending machine is real. I was joking about that, Grant. I would sooner eat a slice from a Sbarro walk-up in a mall. No, I'd rather go to Penn Station in New York City and eat at the chain Sbarro they have under the train station than get a piece of pizza from a vending machine. Quote me, I'll die on that hill.
I agree with that. I would not.
Yeah, I think Grant's right.
Vending machine either.
AI is so rampant right now, and it's so simplified that if you have a business, it's going to be like not. It's going to be like you said, like, that's something that we always find is that most of these boomer businesses, they don't have websites, half of them. It's all been word of mouth and just a business card. So like that's an easy way that you instantly make more business. But he's right. AI is so rampant and so implemented into so many things that if you're not using it or you haven't even thought about it, it's going to really be putting you behind in some way. And you won't believe how easy it is to integrate with almost anything.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, Grant said AI is going to change the world, but good software is just good software. It's not a replacement for people. You still have to have the right plan to execute and use those tools in an effective way. I couldn't have said that any better myself.
Yeah, I think by the way, Grant's a friend of the channel. He's also a very very well established and very successful entrepreneur in his own right. He does a lot of sales stuff, but he also does a lot of good leadership training and a lot of stuff about how to maintain a staff and how to build and cultivate. Like Brody says, he embodies those 3 C's very well. So if you're watching, go give him a follow on his stuff. He's a great great fount of knowledge, and I'm always learning when I see him. So I know Brody is too.
That being said, I'm a little on the fence with him because he said the Vegas vending machine pizza is not bad.
I mean, I
just kidding. Love you, Grant.
I didn't. Okay, no,
No, Ryan, you lost Ryan with that one too.
Nope. He's allowed to have an opinion. He's allowed to have an opinion.
We do have another question though. Julius is asking, what's you guys' perspective on pay-per-call agency partnerships for lead gen for the HVAC company? Personally, I think it depends how you want to run it. If you're, like, if you're an old, tired person running an HVAC company and you've been answering the phone for a long time and you just don't really want to go through the trouble of like trying to like build a phone answering system within your business, then yeah, I would say use something like an answering service or a pay-per-call agency. I think it's smart to have some kind of answering service or something like that, just to service incoming calls that you get for when you're not available to answer the phone. But I do think it's better to develop like an in-house, like actual arm that's answering the phone and like talking to customers, because it's always going to have that higher level personal touch. That being said, I absolutely think there's a great business opportunity, if that's more the direction you're thinking, to be the pay-per-call agency, because there's plenty of HVAC companies out there that are not going to, what I just said is going to go in one ear and out the other, and they do not want to do the work of answering the phone. They just want to show up and do the work, and they would love to just get leads and not have to talk on the phone. So I think if you're a marketing person, that's a great opportunity. If you're looking to like develop things from there, we've got a request to be in our live video. What do you think? I'll let Ryan make the call.
Yeah, we also have another question from Niolo. You followed Grant. Awesome. Thanks, Niolo. So have you ever acquired a business that had a downtrend of revenue but had great assets? We actually have not. No, for us, we're at a point where we're doing this very organically and very, very, I guess, safely, but I think we're just following a very logical pattern where we like to see a business that has good recurring revenue or just good revenue and good business bones to it, because the turnaround investment in a business takes a lot of time and effort. And while we're establishing what we're doing right now, we want to be doing the most we can do to set ourselves up for long-term success, where maybe down the line we'd look at a business to turn around. But at this point, even if it's smaller, but if we see trends going up or just good business principles being applied and good solid returns, we're going to go with them.
Yeah, I would say we're not really like in the turnaround business, like he was saying, especially right now. Like the acquisition that we're currently working on is for like a platform company. So it's like a local company here in town that would be part of like what's called a platform company, which means you plan to add acquisitions of other companies down the road to make it bigger. But for that, we want it to be like a good, stable, growing business that's like got an upward trajectory. We don't want to have to do all this work to turn the company around and try to like rescue it while we're trying to like carve out that plan for future acquisitions down the road. So I think it's two different sides of a coin. It's like turnarounds is a little bit of a different strategy that if you really, really know what you're doing and you can really see the path to like turning it around, it could be a good route, but it's not our chosen route per se.
Yeah, let's throw them on the live. And I mean, also, we just really want to make sure we're taking care of the businesses that we have right now. We're giving them every ounce of ourselves to make sure that them and the people there can be as successful as possible. So
I think, let me see how this works. I don't even know how these live requests work. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, guys?
How's it going?
Good. So I'm not as professional as I would like to be. Live,
That's okay.
Decided to shoot you guys a message.
Ryan's wearing a wife beater under his sweater. Just kidding.
How did you know?
Yeah, so
well, I'm from New Jersey, so
I had two questions for you guys. Little background about me. I own a business marketing subscription company. So I'm specifically in this kind of middle ground of kind of understanding what business owners essentially need for their lead generation, which kind of puts me in an interesting spot of growth and opportunity. And so therefore, I always feel like the next step for me as I scale this company is acquisition. And so I kind of fell in your funnel. And, you know, I don't come from acquisitions. The closest I can think of is like, you know, just watching Shark Tank and looking at business models. But I am a tech guy. And so the two questions that I had, one is speed. How are you guys processing speed? Because I feel like that is a solid 90% of my life right now in terms of I have an idea, pushing it out and like moving forward. In your case, I guess it would be finding deals or, you know, looking for businesses. And then the other one is very quickly, as quickly as you guys possibly can, what are the bones for acquisition? Because I'm a little bit on the outside. I think I'm smart enough to play the game, but, you know, I'm just, you know, there's a barrier to entry as far as education goes. So yeah, those are my questions.
First off, number one thing I'll say, and actually let me flip the camera around. It's like sitting right there. Huge. If you could see that book, huge resource I would recommend for getting like versed in like what the bones of acquisition are and like how to look at deals. This book, Business Wealth Without Risk.
It's a good
we
one.
keep it here in the studio. Ryan and I have both read it and love it. So that's a huge resource I would look at. I don't know if you've heard of Cody Sanchez.
Yeah, for sure.
She just came out with a book literally today, actually, called, yeah, it's fantastic. I started it today. It's called Main Street Millionaire. So I would definitely look into that book and like start reading that. It's been great so far. You're definitely in a great position to start thinking about it. Like those kinds of insights and like knowing how companies grow from like a lead generation perspective is really good. What I would think about, like the biggest thing I would think about is like what it is for you personally. For you, I think the bones of an acquisition, and Cody talks about this in her book, I think the bones of an acquisition are like, what is the opportunity for you specifically? And like, how can you add value? If the company has, if you feel like you're really great in the marketing department, which it sounds like is your area of expertise, I would look for a company that has like something where like anything you don't feel particularly strong in business wise is already covered, maybe through the employees or through a partner you would be bringing into the deal. I think the more you can personalize it, the better. And then your other question was about speed. Could you give me a little bit more about like what you mean by like how do we process speed?
Yeah, so Cody speaks about this a lot. She made a post the other day that essentially said that she's starting to believe that most of business is literally speed of innovation, speed of process, speed. And I was listening to her and I was like, that's exactly
like closer to your mic so that we can hear.
Because entrepreneurship can be very like, you know, finding your employee.
Put it closer to your mic so people can hear talking.
Finding the next person that works for you, finding your next deal. It's just, you know, it can be very slow. And so speed is, of course, something that I'm trying to understand further. Ultimately, I guess what I mean is, you know, do you guys have a system for, you know, doing everything? Are you, you know, yeah, do you guys have a system? And also to answer your question, I don't really know where I fall in this. My dad had a traditional business. He was a painter. I'm in tech, and so the way I always see acquisition is kind of acquiring tech models, tech-based businesses, and just scaling them because there's not a real, you know, a whole lot in between. But I'm always super interested in brick and mortar and, you know, real companies as well. So, yeah, that's that.
With your tech background, one thing, and Ryan and I both have a little bit of a tech background. We're both like huge enthusiasts and have used tech like in our jobs in the past and businesses. I think a huge opportunity for anyone who has like a strong background in tech is going into some of these really boring businesses and just using that tech background within the actual business. So let the business take care of the boring stuff. Let like the ideas, the employees, the people that have been doing like the service delivery or like the end product delivery, let that be something that the business continues to do well, like it has been. But if you can bring in technology, whether it be your lead generation tactics or whether it be like CRM automation, whether it be like workflows,
That's literally all I do all day. So yeah.
if you can bring those tools into something that's already running well and solid, I think you can have a lot more impact than just trying to find like the micro improvements in something that is already tech based. That being said, a lot of people are having great success in the like tech space with acquisitions. For me, I just didn't necessarily feel like I was well versed enough in that to be in playing in that game, at least not yet. But I saw a real opportunity just to get our feet wet with these boring businesses as kind of starter businesses and be able to just take some of that experience into it. As far as like speed and having a system for acquisitions in particular, the number one thing for speed, I would say, is having a really strongly defined deal box, which to me means what are we saying no to? The deal box is like, what kind of business am I willing to acquire? So it's like what kinds of requirements does it have to have? For you, you've got to figure out like how much cash flow would I need to be bringing in. You've got to factor in like if you're taking out some kind of loan through the SBA or something, what kind of debt service is going to play into that, and how will that change the cash flow? So you got to think about like what do you need from the business. And you've got to, like, in my opinion, it's one of those things where if everything looks like a target, nothing is. And you've got to really be able to like hone in on what exactly is an opportunity so that you can say no to everything else. Because if you go on like Biz Buy Sell or one of the listing websites right now, like there's plenty of opportunities to look at, but you could get overwhelmed trying to pursue all of them. Versus if you have like a very particularly outlined idea of like what exactly is a good opportunity for you, you can kind of sift through and find them easily that way.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And our world, as you guys know already, this is just called qualified leads. If it's inbound, but going outbound is a little bit more complicated. So yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I guess if I could throw one more last question in there.
Sure.
You guys funding your acquisitions by yourself or using money by other people? I mean, excuse my lack of awareness of words to use in this, but using other people's money, banks, I would assume that is the difference between just being a solo entrepreneur doing acquisitions and then private equity. Like, is that the
that's
thing?
the big difference.
Like, I don't know what I'm saying.
No, you're nailing it, man. Don't second guess yourself. You're all amongst friends here.
No, that's spot on. When you're going out and like using other people's money to invest into businesses, that's more like the private equity route. So that's like the route that we're looking at. We have a business that we have under contract right now that we're working on an acquisition for. And without getting like too granular in it, that things that I'm not really able to share, that's one where we're bringing like a small portion of our own capital into it, but also bringing like the majority of capital from private capital. So like raising it from well-funded investors that just like the particular deal as a business opportunity. We're also looking at some like in the SBA route. The SBA can be like a really good way to get into like a first acquisition, just because they make the terms of borrowing the money very generous. They spread it out. Like you put like a down payment on a house, you put down like 10%, and then the remaining 90% gets financed over like 10 years, is usually how it plays out. So that allows you to find a business where the cash flow of the business is covering most of, if not, should be covering all of the down or like the payment that you have every year for the debt service. So those can be good opportunities as well. The tough thing with SBA is it's a little bit of a slow process, and you're on the hook for that money. So it's like you're giving a personal guarantee. So it's kind of like a little bit of like a bigger risk tolerance play, where as long as like the economics of it pan out and like the business can cover its debt service with its cash flow, then it could be a good play. But you also have to know at the end of the day that you're on the hook, and like you have to collateralize the loan with like assets or money that you have. So it's not an opportunity that everyone can take advantage of either. But if you can, the cool thing about it is you could potentially get all of the equity in that deal. So you could come in, like you get the loan, and with a down payment, you put some of your own money down, and all of a sudden you have 100% ownership of that company. You could also go find a private investor to cover that down payment, which is a strategy that a lot of people are starting to use. So if you don't have that 10% down payment, but you know someone who does and would want some equity, I know there's this guy on Instagram that's really good about sharing that particular strategy. I think his name is Ben Kelly or something like that. But he talks about basically like you go out and you find the business opportunity, you get an SBA loan, but the 10% or 15% that you're putting down, you get from like a private investor, but then you just give them like 15 or 20% equity in exchange for their 10 or 15% down. So they're getting a little bit more equity in exchange for covering that money, but you don't actually have to come out of pocket.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Very cool.
Oh, Grant.
Could be here pretty much all day with you guys. I mean, I'm a questionaholic.
Come back
We
next
love
week,
that.
man. We love having you on next week. So
Yeah, we do this, by the way, every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So feel free to hop in anytime.
also, Grant dropped a comment about the speed question. Grant said, "There's no shortage of great ideas, only execution. Taking your business ideas from the ether into reality is about learning to be disconnected from the results of your ideas. No good, no bad, just done or not done. If an idea is executed and finished, it will push you along. Stop worrying about having the idea fully realized or completing your brain before you do it. Just always be in the state of doing something." And I think we kind of live in that state as a collective. And I think that's some really great knowledge there from Grant.
I see it this way too, is like, if you're thinking about getting into some new arena, like I think in business, the more you can develop the sense of like, think of it as like jumping into a pool. I would like, rather than like studying every single like square inch of the pool and like before I decide to try to swim into it, I would rather just jump in and start swimming and kind of learn to swim as I go, but with a decent idea of how swimming works. So I think it's just about finding that balance of like, you don't have to have it all figured out, but you gotta like get in and get started.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I'll add to even that perspective, a person that I'm a bit of a fan of that kind of does this in an entertaining sort of way is Rob Dyrdek. And he, has his, machine, private equity company. But I think that oftentimes people don't quantify when you say like speed, like what you need. Because you can actually make a list of those things. It's not probably more than 15 of those things, and you can do them at incredibly high levels as long as you find the right people to actually do those. So what we've been doing with our agency or our subscription model is just figuring out who those freelancers are, just so we know who we can come back to that already has a high enough quality, for our liking. Oftentimes people kind of get stuck in the, they don't like the quality of that person's stuff, and so they don't move forward with it. But if you find the right people, they're better than you at pretty much everything. Marketers, designers, graphic designers. I'm just the person that puts it together. I don't know if you guys kind of feel the same, but yeah. So
no,
that's awesome.
I completely agree. The game of business acquisitions is no different in the sense that it's all about figuring out how to build a team. And like one thing, like I'm in it for the long run personally. So whenever I look at a deal, I'm not necessarily even trying to figure out how can I get the most equity possible in this deal. I'm mostly looking to figure out how can I get this deal done. And if I need to bring in people that cover the weaknesses that I have or the areas that I don't cover myself, then I'll bring in those people and make some equity available, whether that's other people's money, other people's expertise. I think that's kind of the viewpoint that I have. And it's just like building the team that can make the deal work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, cool.
Awesome stuff, man. Thank you for hopping on.
Yeah, for sure. Took some notes, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Awesome.
Heck
We'll
yeah,
see you
dude.
then. With that being said,
We got one more question from Niolo.
Okay,
Niolo came back and said, when structuring a deal, how have you managed to keep a cash surplus or working capital for you to develop the business? Last one of the night. What do you say, Brody?
This will be the last question of the night because this is actually, I think, going to be our longest episode ever. We
Thank you guys for joining in and
today.
giving us questions and stuff. We love you guys for doing it. We appreciate it.
So how do you manage to keep a cash surplus or working capital to develop the business? That's a really good question. I think you have to kind of think about that before you acquire it in the first place. You have to think about the working capital. If you're getting an SBA loan, like we were talking about, usually they give you working capital as part of the loan. Like if you were getting like a $200,000 loan for a business, they're probably going to give you like a good like 15 to 20K in working capital as part of that loan as well. And they factor that into part of the loan from the ones that we've gotten and looked at. But if you're not, then I think you also have to factor that in if you're getting some kind of private investment, or if you are, potentially investing it in yourself. You have to factor in like what I think would be a good idea is to look at like, what does it take to run this business for 3 to 6 months? If you really want to be conservative, 6 months, but like 3 to 6 months based on like the expenses on its current P&L sheets. What does it take if it doesn't make money and I've got to run it for 3 to 6 months without making any revenue? And if you can come in with that much working capital, then you're in a little bit of a safer position because it gives you like the leeway to not have it all figured out for a few months.
Yeah. I guess to add to that, my only thing would be when we're looking at a deal and we're looking at specifically cash flow, it's back to what we said in our last video. Are you buying a job? Or are you buying a business? The difference between working on or in the business and how much you're going to be taking out of that. So we always look for something that has a bit of structure involved, and we're willing to take out seemingly a lot less than somebody who normally would to reinvest it to pay down the loan quickly and to kind of establish more pieces in the business to allow us to work on, not in. So that really is what it boils down to, as well as, your level of involvement and the size that you're working with, and also maybe putting some cash aside for consulting and getting the owner on as somebody who will stick by for a small fee to ensure that smooth and easy transition.
Completely agreed. Now, I know we could go all day answering these questions, and these have been amazing questions, but Ryan and I do also have to sleep. So we will see you all on the next Deal Flow Live. But Ryan, what is the best place for people to find you?
Find me on LinkedIn, Ryan Santo on LinkedIn. Just shoot me a request and send a little message saying you saw me on Deal Flow Live. Always happy to chat. And Brody, where can they find you?
You can find me on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, just about anywhere. But the best place to message me would be LinkedIn or Instagram. Those are the messages I usually see the most often. So message one of us, let us know what you liked from the show. Let us know what takeaways you had, but also let us know what you want to see next time. Let us know if there's particular industries that you want to hear like a deep dive on or a breakdown on. We can look at deals in them. The purpose of this show is to, just look at good deals and talk through how they work. So bring your questions, bring your deals that you want to look at. You could send us a listing, whatever you want us to look at.
And we've had some great guests on this past year. So go look at those VODs. And if you like somebody's stuff, you want to see them back, we'd love to bring back our guests for super specific stuff. So let us know. Give us some feedback. We want to make this show for you guys as well as ourselves.
Yep. Stay tuned. And until next time, Deal Flow Live every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll see you on the next one with some awesome stuff or an awesome guest. See you then.
See ya.